So, hi everybody, welcome to this presentation today. So if you want, then let's start with that. Thank you very much for taking time and joining this. And we have some participants from all over the world, some colleagues from Australia even, and of course then through whole Europe and maybe also some from North America. So really, thank you very much for joining. And well, actually the topic today, it is also a little bit the problem. Usually this is a presentation which is interactive, it is more emotional, and now it's difficult, but I try to imagine where you're all sitting and so on. So before we get to the presentation, 2 or 3 organizational issues. The presentation will be recorded, so it will be then put on Facebook or YouTube and so on, if you want. After about 45 minutes, then we will have time for questions and some answers. So you can send in your questions by the chat, but I guess at the end would be then better. And during the session, everybody is on mute, except myself. I hope you accept and understand that. Well, dear friends, once again, welcome. My name is Hamid Peseschkian, and I'm, so to say, your host today. If I'm not giving this kind of presentations, I'm usually engaged in psychotherapeutic training, which in Germany is quite a complex thing. It's a 5-year training, and we have in Germany a large academy. It's called the Wiesbaden Academy of Psychotherapy. So we have a postgraduate academy with some 500 people in training to become psychotherapists. At the same time, we have a large outpatient clinic, which is one of the largest in Germany, with about 160 part-time psychotherapists in training. At this moment, the whole academy is on Zoom, so on video and online teaching. In the outpatient clinic, 2/3 of the patients come and 1/3 is then per video. And besides that, I'm also engaged in the World Association for Positive and Transcultural Psychotherapy. And these are the countries where at the moment training programs are going on. And so some of the experiences I want to share also with you is what colleagues in different countries are doing and experiencing during this pandemic. And some of them are today here, so really welcome once again. For today, I wanted to concentrate briefly on 6 subjects. Of course, there are hundreds of things to say, but moderation in everything is useful. I want at the beginning say a few words about the principle that it's the same pandemic, but it means something different for every one of us. I think that's important for the further discussion. Then I want to say something about the main mental and psychological problems during the pandemic. Then a very, very brief introduction to positive psychotherapy. Then what can we do during the pandemic and the current time? How can we develop goals for the life after the pandemic? Because some people, you sometimes have the feeling they think there is no life after that, but there was a life before and a life after that. And at the end, a few words about crisis as an opportunity. So I hope you all agree with that. If it's the case, then I continue. Okay. You know, this kind of crisis always appear worldwide, but I think what is this time so special that it's really a global crisis. It's not a regional one. And I think out of all the statistics, this is a very impressive one from 2 weeks ago, that in 191 countries, schools are closed. I mean, this is unbelievable. So 1.5 billion students are affected by that. So I think this is something which really makes it a global crisis with all the different effects on us. There is a nice quotation, a very important quotation in that context, which says, "We are all in the same storm, but we are not all in the same boat. It is the same virus, it's the same pandemic, but for every one of us, it means something else. I think this is very, very important when we speak with friends, neighbors, colleagues, relatives, clients, patients. We first have to see who is sitting in which kind of boat and how is the situation in the other boat. Or to speak with Leo Tolstoy, who said, because I know we have today some participants from Russia and the Ukraine, he said in Anna Karenina, all happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. So it is the same pandemic, but has very different meanings for all of us. Maybe a good example, you might know this from the internet, is how we solve this problem. So if the virus and the pandemic is the problem, different cultures have different approaches towards a solution. So please don't take it literally. Even people in the same family can be, so to say, from different cultural backgrounds. But this only shows that there are different ways how we approach something, and in a crisis like that, this makes a major difference. Or there are also some transcultural aspect of this physical distancing, just for your information. In Germany, for example, they say, what are 1.5 meters? 18 bottles of wine. In America, they say it's 1 refrigerator length away. And in Siberia, Russia, they say it's 1.5 meters is a bear. A small bear, but it's a bear anyhow. So I think this is also something so that everybody tries to understand it in his own way, what it means. What makes this a very, I think, personal and unique pandemic, I would like to say, maybe the following points. You might know them, but it's maybe good to so to say, to agree on them before we continue. One of the aspects which decides what impact the pandemic has, of course, is the objective risk of getting COVID-19 in my area. So do I live in a small remote area? Do I live in New York City, in the Bronx, for example? There is a difference on that. My life circumstances. Housing, do I live in a small apartment with a few people, or do I live in the countryside with a large garden? What is my profession? Am I more at home now? Am I now a health worker who is at the front? How is my present job situation? Do I have internet access during this time? In which culture am I living, and what's my cultural background? For example, it's a more individualistic culture where people are more distant anyhow sometimes, or it's a more collectivistic society where I'm living, and therefore it's very difficult to keep this distance. How is my family situation? Alone, with family, children, grandparents, elderly people, and so on and so on. My financial circumstances before the pandemic, but also now with changing of job situations. How are the government regulations at this moment regarding the pandemic? How is in general the laws of my country regarding this situation? And I don't want to go deeper into that, but would be also an important subject. Of course, the leaders of our countries also play an important role. How do we perceive the present pandemic? The medical conditions in my own city, are there hospitals, are there no hospitals, do I have insurance, and so on and so on. Am I under quarantine or not? This is a very important issue. And my own personality traits. You see, an introvert, for them the quarantine is different than for an extrovert who is suffering a lot to do that. This, I think, is also something we have to bear in mind, because, of course, our personality does not change during the quarantine, and not before and not after that. And of course, what previous experiences do I have? Any traumas or any existing mental and physical disorders? So I mentioned that, even you know that, so that it's clear that what we're discussing is some general aspects, but many things depend. So what is the effect of this pandemic? And it's, I think, very useful to ask people always at the beginning, okay, how is your situation now? How are you doing? What does it mean for you concretely? just a few words. I think we should beware of some things. I don't know how it's in your place, but here I sometimes have the feeling there is sometimes like a unwilling competition, so to say, who is suffering more, whose situation is worse now, who has an essential job or profession, or who is just sitting at home. Then we see many of us already the social division and the danger of that. So between rich and poor in the same country, the situation is different regarding the pandemic. And as often in this kind of crisis, prejudices against become more against anyone who's different, minorities, other nationalities. Let's say it's a Chinese virus, close the borders, or the elderly would die anyhow, and so on and so on. So this all means we have to be careful not to judge someone, because as we all know, suffering and stress are very, very subjective, and we cannot judge others. For some people, it is like Corona vacation, as we say in Germany. For others, it's the worst time in their life. And of course, it's always easy to say, if I would be in your situation, let's say if you are with small children in an apartment, you would say, oh, a single alone in an apartment, how wonderful. And the single is then suffering because of other things. So I think this is important to bear in mind when we speak with others, so that it doesn't cause any misunderstandings. As you know, there will be different stages of the pandemic, and today in early May 2020, we are just experiencing in most countries the first wave, the first phase. So after the virus, so to say, will come, and it's beginning now, the emotional pandemic, then will come the economic crisis, and there will be also some political and societal challenges. We don't have time to go now deeper into that today, but I think this is important to bear in mind. And now we are just from the first getting to the second stage. In most countries, in some countries, we don't even have met the first wave already. Now I would like to say something about the mental disturbances and psychological problems. This is a list, you could say, of the main mental and psychological problems, and this shows the dimension of that. We can't go deep now to each one of them, but to summarize up, one is anxiety, a permanent anxiety that something is happening, fear for oneself, for example, in the family. Can't go out, then news are negative, and so on and so on. Anger, aggressiveness, aggression against others, violent fantasies. You know, you want to kill the virus, but you don't get the virus then, yeah? And then you become violent, aggressive against other people, yeah? In the street, at home, and so on then. I think you all feel that the level of aggression has increased in our places. You feel desperate, you know, you can't do anything. This virus, you can't get this virus, so that makes it very complicated. Some people have the desire to control others. You can't control your own life, it's out of control. We get to that later. You can't get the virus, so you want to control others, either at home or, for example, in Germany, sometimes when people are outside, then there are too many of them, you call the police, so why are they outside and not sticking to the law? So this general impatience, boredom. For a few days at home it might be nice, but at the end it gets very difficult. Then unfortunately suicidal ideas and suicide. We just had, for example, now here in our state, in Hessen, the case that the Ministry of Finance killed himself a few weeks ago, and his assistant too. Yeah, and there are many, many other people who are suffering from that. Loneliness, then the desire of emotional nearness. You want to, we are sociable human beings, want to be emotionally near to other people, physical also sometimes, but emotionally near, it's not possible. Then a lack of motivation and interest. There are hundreds of things I could do, but I don't have any energy, any motivation to do something. The feeling of isolation, that you feel isolated. For sometimes like imprisonment. Your eating patterns have changed, as you might have seen yourself. Then a very important point, I will later get to that, it's the lack of self-confidence. Because from what do I get now self-esteem and self-confidence? This general feeling of loss of control. I have lost the control of my own life. Someone is doing something with me, the government, the virus, the police, and I can't do anything, and it's my life. Then very unfortunately in some places, in families, the increase of domestic violence, which is understandable if you look at this list, connected with that child abuse, alcohol abuse, illegal drugs are difficult to get in that time, at least I guess so, but alcohol you can go and buy. And of course, worsening of existing mental disorders. With this, of course, come a whole list of other effects. The lack of personal hygiene, no or very less physical activity. Many people develop now unclear physical symptoms. We could say maybe these are psychosomatic disorders then. Insomnia, gain of weight for many people. In some other places, unfortunately, hunger because you don't have money anymore to buy food. The stress at home due to remote schooling and remote work. Then something what we call now quarantine parenting. You know, you sit at home, you have to work, so to say, remote work, and you have to do the homeschooling then. Marital and family problems. Once you got married, it was not clear that you will stick together 24 hours, 6 weeks in the row. Many people too much sitting at the computer. Then something, for example, which affects me a lot is this change of relationships in general and the attitude towards other people. For example, sometimes in the street, I see people, when they see you, they run on the other side like you have the virus somewhere. And so I'm very concerned if these relationships will change in future. Will we be able to get back to normal? For some people, the faith in God increases in such a situation. For others, it decreases. The wearing of masks outside causes fear. You know, when you walk around in many cultures, you are not used to that. It causes a lot of fear, especially in children. And something what we say in Germany, I don't know how it's in your place, we say now we have finally more experts than patients. Everybody is an expert in COVID-19 and the coronavirus, and you get so many information and news and so on then, and this is very stressful. As I said, too much news also in the newspaper and so on then. And three other points which are playing a very important role is it just a physical distancing or is it also a social distancing? The physical distancing is one thing, but you can still be friendly with each other. But in some places, it has become a social distancing, which makes it very, very difficult. The others in your place, is it just are you under quarantine or just some restrictions? And what will be very important, and nobody of us knows this at that moment, how long will be this shutdown or lockdown? And there are many scientific investigations about that the duration of such a lockdown will be very important in what illnesses it will cause and so on. So to summarize up, we can say each of us will emerge in our own way from this storm, but it's in our own way. What is now meant when I say emotional pandemic, and this term has been used by other people too? You see, on one hand, we could say at the end, we are just in a situation or life event which we have to accept and cannot change. We have this often in life. For example, if someone dies, you have to accept this loss and you cannot change it. For some people and some cultures, it's easier to adapt and to accept these situations. And for some other, it's very difficult. And as mentioned before, once the virus has gone, the emotional pandemic will come. Or more or less, it has started now already, and it might last much, much longer. So the virus might have gone already, hopefully, but then this emotional wave will come. So the traumatic long-term effects on individuals, families, and societies might be huge. If it would not be so sad, as some people say, we will see in a few months, do we have more divorces or more babies which are born? So this is indeed the situation, and nobody knows at that moment. Having said that, I would get very, very briefly to a short introduction, but it's more brief than introduction to positive psychotherapy, but this will explain the next point which I want to bring, and this is the main aspect of this presentation, how to find or how to deal with the current time. As you know, there is something which we can call like a positive mental health movement. There are many people engaged into that, and three of the major protagonists are these three gentlemen, and I had the privilege to meet all three of them actually. So one is positive psychotherapy, which was founded by my father, Nossrat Peseschkian, in the 1970s. One is positive psychology, founded by Martin Seligman in 1998. One is positive psychiatry, which was founded a few years ago by Professor Dilip Jesti in the United States. They work differently, but I guess all want to improve the mental health and see what are maybe positive elements into that. I want to focus now on positive psychotherapy. Positive psychotherapy, don't be afraid, we don't have to go through all of that. It was founded by Nossrat Peseschkian in the 1970s. At that time, there was a spirit, the spirit of time was that of humanistic psychology. And personal encounters with Viktor Frankl, Jacob Moreno, Heinrich Meng had a great impact on Nossrat Peseschkian. And he was also very much inspired by the humanistic teachings and virtues of the Baha'i faith, and was looking for an integrative method, especially because of problems between psychoanalysts and behavior therapists at that time, but some of them are still there, unfortunately. And based on cross-cultural observations, he came up with this method, which in 1977 he called in German Positive Psychotherapy, and then 10 years later it was also published in English. So this method is a humanistic psychodynamic method. There are a lot of books. It is applied in different fields: psychotherapy, counseling, education, management, training, and so on. We have centers in about 24 countries, and there is a large world association which is supporting these activities. Positive comes from the Latin word positum or positivus, which means actual, real, concrete. And we say actual and real are not only the problems of a client or a patient, but also his capacity to deal with that, the capacity to become healthy again, the capacity to find a solution. So this is also a part of that, of the actual and the real, is also this so-called positive elements. This is based on a positive conception of human nature. In German, it's Menschenbild, and you can call it resource-oriented, salutogenetic, positive humanistic. It's based on this Baha'i concept of regard humans as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. So if you look at every person, child, person, client, whatsoever, as a mine of diamonds. So everybody has other diamonds, but everybody has diamonds. So positive capacities which have to be developed. This educational process we have to do, but everybody has only good diamonds. But the challenge is to develop these diamonds and get them out of the mountain, so to say. And this concept leads to that approach that, whereas usually in traditional procedure between therapist or doctor and patient is the illness of the patient or the client, in the positive field we see the capacities of a human being especially. So the capacity, or nowadays we say resilience, so the capacity to become healthy again, to find a solution, to come up with something which nobody has thought before that, and so on. And this leads us now to the following aspects. How can we apply now this in managing the current time of such a crisis? The first is we have to learn to change our perspective. If you look something from another point of view, it changes. Not the situation, but my own perspective is important and decisive. Life experience shows, unfortunately, that often we cannot change a situation, but when I change my perspective, also the situation changes for me personally. We apply this a lot in stress management, which we can do now also. Is, you see, two persons in the same situation have another perspective depending on if you feel remote controlled or self-determined. In German, there's a very fine expression. Sometimes German is specific, sometimes not. In this case, it is. It's fremdbestimmt oder selbstbestimmt. So do I feel that others control me? This is always stressful. Here it could be the government, the virus, the laws, the police. Or am I self-determined? And this decides actually if a situation is perceived by me as stressful or not. Because not everything is cancelled. Here's a list of many things which are not cancelled, and sometimes you have the feeling that for some people really it seems that everything has been cancelled. There is nothing left anymore. But this is a question of the perspective, and that's something which depends on me and not so much on the government. Don't get surprised that this one is in German, but it's understandable. It says here, it depends on your vision. You see, there are three gentlemen who are doing the same thing. They are like working on a stone and in order to build something. You see from the faces, this one is depressed. He has a mild depression or subdepressive, and this one is fully motivated. It cannot be because of the work, because the work is identical. But someone has the vision, I'm working on the stone. The other one, I'm working or I'm constructing like a window. And the third one has the vision, I'm building a cathedral. This is, I think, something which we can transfer now very good to our present situation with the pandemic. Let's say if you're at home stuck with your children, the first version would be, I have to change the diapers and everybody's hungry 5 times per day. Yeah, I have a friend who said, I'm cooking day and night, and my husband and the children, they're only eating. I should limit the time where they can go to the refrigerator. This is one thing. The other would be, I'm educating a future world citizen, for example. Then, so of course it's easier said than done, but depending on the vision I develop, and this is something I decide. So it's self-determined which vision I have. The same situation will be perceived in a different way. I think that's something very important, especially in such a situation which you have to accept and cannot change. Now, dear friends, we get to this main part, what we call in positive psychotherapy, the balance model. And I think this is really like a key technique, key instrument, how to deal in a situation like that. Let me briefly explain this to you. We say there are 4 aspects in life in which human beings can invest their time and energy. One is for the body and health. One is work and achievement. The third are relationships and contacts. And the fourth one is questions about the future, meaning, goals, and so on. And depending on my family, my culture, some areas are more developed than others. See, in some families, body is very important, so others, the work, relationship, or spirituality, and so on. I will come back to that. So, for example, you see in Western countries, usually this body, sports, nutrition, food, and this and that is very important, enough sleep and that. And work is very important. In more and so on. And the fourth sphere, like purpose of life, future, goals, religion, and so it's very important. You believe in countries, so to say, a little bit between East and West, like Russia, China, Eastern Germany was like that. It's like achievement is very important, and relationships and so on. So if you go back to that, Now, like if you would have a seminar, you would have time to do this together, but now you have to do it for yourself. So the question is, if you have 100% life energy, how much do you spend for each of these areas? How much, so to say, before the pandemic and now, how much of your energy goes into your body and health? How much for achievement and work? How much for relationships? And how much for the question about the future and so on? Because I mean, some people, it looks like that. So altogether, you have 100% of energy. So if you spend here 70% for achievement, then it's just something, 20% left, 25% for the other three areas. These balance models is based on the concept that you can be only healthy over the long run if you are in a balance. If you put 25% of your energy for your physical needs, body, health, sexuality, sports, outer appearance, dress, so on, and cosmetics and this and that, 25% for work, achievement, doing something, 25% for your relationships, contacts, family, friends, colleagues, and community, and 25% for the questions about the future, meaning, life goals, spirituality, and so on. But this model is not about time, because by time, again, we are controlled, remote controlled. We have 24 hours, not more. This is mainly a model for energy management, because energy depends on me. So, for example, if someone says, I can be 8 hours at work and I'm just 10 minutes at home and I'm immediately exhausted, so it shows it's not the question of time, but it's a question about energy. So how much energy do I spend for a sphere of life? How much does it give me back? So this would be like the ideal concept we have. Now is the question, how is it now during the quarantine? How much energy do I spend for these four aspects? And from which of them do I get my self-esteem at that moment? You know, self-esteem and self-confidence we all need. And I get it from things which are important for me, for my body, for my work, family, or for my religion, and so on. Now, during the quarantine, and the pandemic, for many of us, if you go through that, you will see it's minus, 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 minus. You can't go out for sports. You don't look after yourself anymore. Work is, you have lost the job, you're working at home, or you have just, you're waiting at home. Relationships, you can't go out anymore. It's just the people who live with you in your apartment. And future, well, you say, where's the future? All my plans have changed. This virus has changed all my things, and so on. Then. Well, in positive psychotherapy, we say, to go back to that, you don't become sick or ill because one area is overdeveloped, like here. So this person, for example, will not get problems because he's working too much. He's getting problems because he's neglecting the three other areas in life because they have not been developed. So this is the same thing here. So one of the ways to deal with this quarantine would be to see how is my present situation now in these four aspects, which areas have I neglected, from where do I get any self-esteem, and which of the areas I can try to develop now under these circumstances. Maybe two examples. We are working with this model. I know we have some colleagues who have given lectures and presentations in a prison. You could say, okay, how can you be a balance in prison? Nevertheless, there you can still take care of these four aspects. We have people who have given presentations in elderly homes. How can you develop these four areas? Maybe they don't go to work anymore, but still you can try to, I don't know, to read, to achieve something, to feel useful, or to take care of your health and think about future things and so on then. So this is a very important thing, I think. How can we now focus on the aspects we have neglected up to now? Because I've neglected them before. Maybe they have changed now. And from which of the areas do I get self-esteem at that moment? As mentioned before, the change of perspective changes our self-esteem. Am I locked down, or do I have maybe the possibility to see things from another perspective? So one of the important points would be to set goals for all these 4 areas and to start now to develop some of the neglected areas. So maybe now is the time to focus, even you can't go outside, maybe on some physical activities, and there are many wonderful programs in the internet how you can do sport. I know some people have started to read a few books, learn something new. Some people now experience for the first time what does it mean to have a family. For example, we have here some patients, they have said, sorry, they have said, I didn't know that this attention deficit hyperactivity of my child was so bad. I didn't know how difficult this is, or I didn't know how difficult, what difficulties he has in school and so on. And so for many people, this is a new, maybe the first time. For them here, our neighbor just said they have the child is now 23. They said we have never spent 6 weeks together in the whole life. Yeah, the husband, wife, and the child. So these are unique opportunities, or as they say, if you don't come up with some new skills, maybe you lack not time but discipline. So I think this is something you can do in your own life, or if you are a counselor, psychotherapist, or mental health worker, how can we help others, and of course also ourselves, to set goals for these 4 areas and to develop them. So I hope this is a little bit understandable and gives a few ideas about that. I know some of you know that, but I have to show that. I think it's a good example. You have heard maybe that Isaac Newton and William Shakespeare, when they lived in England in the, I don't know, 1600 and 1660, there were also some plagues and some other quarantine there. And both of them used the time, well, Newton used that time and he conceived the law of universal gravitation and became the foundation of calculus. And Shakespeare wrote his plays King Lear, Macbeth, and Antony and Cleopatra. Maybe we are not Newton and Shakespeare now, but I would say now in the light of that, what we just discussed, so the challenge is, whatever the circumstances, to see how get I more in control of my own life. How can I find a balance? How can I develop areas despite the virus which is going on, but which I cannot change? One thing I want to share now with you, a brief thing, is this question about being proactive or reactive. You all know that in order to stay in control of your own life, you must have the feeling that you are doing something proactively, not reactively. Reactive is the virus is coming, I have to adjust to that. Proactive is I start to take my life again back in my own hands, even if it is in different circumstances. Maybe you know this picture here, which was in the internet. What are the things I can control during the pandemic, and what are the things I cannot control, so I have to let it go? You know, in Western countries, this thing with the toilet paper has become a major issue. Yeah. But all the question is, how long can this last, and so on, other people and so on, and what are the things I can control? And we would say one can take this as an example and then look in the balance model. Okay, how can I develop things in these 4 spheres? And this depends on me, or not so much on the things I cannot control. Once I have the feeling I'm proactively doing that, and I know some families, even though it's a very difficult situation, but they have really started and they're doing wonderful in these difficulties. And our other people, they have totally collapsed. There is a catastrophe at home, and it's getting worse every day. One thing which seems simple, but it's very important, is how do we get a daily routine and structure during a quarantine? You know, for a few days without structure it's okay, but in general we need that. And this is not just something from the internet. If you have a small child like a toddler, you can use that. But I know from some families who have done something like that now during the quarantine. So maybe you get up a little bit later, but they have really arranged that to have a daily schedule for all family members if they're at home, and it works. And those who, you know, the whole day are in their sleeping dress and so on, then you become every day more stressed, and you don't achieve anything. This again brings a low self-esteem. You become aggressive against yourself, against the others, you become depressed, and so on and so on. It's like a vicious circle. So this, I think, would be something very important, to develop some kind of daily schedule. One can use like a family group, discuss this together, and so on then. And something which might be very important is also to write down some of your insights. In positive psychotherapy, we work with a saying which says, if you want something you have never had, you have to do something you have never done before. So there will be a time after the current time. We don't know when, but there will be. So what am I going to do that? So what will be my goals, my plans in these 4 aspects? For example, we discussed with some patients we have here, write these insights down like a letter to yourself and put it in a letter, close the envelope. Why? Because very often, once the situation changes, we all fell back into our own and old behavior. Now I say, oh, it would be so wonderful to, I don't know, to go out and exercise. Once I can go, I'm not interested anymore. Or now I say, oh, I want so much to have more relationship and contacts and so on, and then it will change again. So that's very important, to write down your own insights, so to say. So to summarize this up, once the circumstance is so that you can deal with that, it will be the question, is there a way to see this crisis as an opportunity, or will I go back to my past life habits? Because my life was so great, I go back. One of the things is, this crisis can help me to learn, which is very difficult, but one of the life lessons, to accept the things I cannot change. This is, I think, one of the important life lessons, and many people have problems with that. The second is, what will I change in this balance model, in these 4 areas after the pandemic? Write them really down, concretely. What will there be any, and what will be my new priorities in life? I know some people have really, from the last 6-7 weeks, have learned a lot and said, okay, for sure I will spend more time for this and that, and less time with this and that. For example, I see I've spent a lot of things I took for granted, and now I see it's not granted to go out or whatever. What is really important for me? Again, now we have to sit down and write this. Once all these lockdowns are over, everybody will rush, first of all, to the hairdresser, but then also to many other things, and then I'm afraid we won't learn anything from that. And what is very important, what are open conflicts and problems I have to solve? So maybe I found out in my family there are some things I really have to work on. Usually we have been so busy, but now I see we have to solve these things. What did I find out about myself, my partner, and my children, which I did not know before? Spending time with someone who's very close to me for a long time brings a lot of new insights. So I think that's something very important. I know for many fathers, for example, it's or working moms, it's now a new experience to be around the child 24 hours. The next one is, do I have an essential job? I know that for some people this has really started to become an issue. So am I satisfied with my present job, or maybe I will focus my energy in future, if possible, to something else which I feel is more essential for society? And another point, the last point, which of course you can't influence always, but for those who can, do I have at that moment the right partner for the current time? Spending with someone so many hours, it's a very important issue. I don't know what this has been, but anyhow, do I have the right partner for the for the quarantine, or do I see I have to work on this relationship and we have to get further to that? So friends, at the end, I want to say that depending on the own situation of someone or on your life circumstances, it is really okay to get help. Some people will need the help of a psychiatrist, psychotherapist, psychologist, counselor. For some of us, self-help books might be enough, some groups to join online. There are hotlines, internet, online tools, but really if one sees that this mental disturbances, the psychological problem gets so stressful, we have to seek for help, because as you have seen, it can end very bad, suicide, aggression, harm to other people, and there are possibilities nowadays to find a solution. So I think it's very important to really look for help and so on then. So dear friends, this was some of the ideas I wanted to share with you. As I said, I'm sorry that we cannot interact directly, but thank you for listening. And now we get to some, I don't know what is this red line someone made then, but anyhow, don't get disturbed. Okay, so now we have some time for maybe your questions and some answers if you want to write them. Thank you very much. Maybe shall we Freigabe? So now you can just see again everybody to see, okay, if they are still awake. Yeah, you see people are still awake. Okay, yeah. So maybe you have some questions and we can try to discuss them as far as possible. If you have a question, please write them in the chat, because now it was difficult to. And for those who want, this is some further information you can get from our websites or on Facebook, but especially from our websites here about the things we are doing and so on. Then. I have here a very nice assistant who helps me with the chat, and then yeah. Okay, if there are not so many questions, which is, as I said, it's a little bit difficult in this situation. So we will put the recording online. So if you want to look at the slides later and so on, you can do that. And really, thank you very much for your attention. And yeah, really all the best for all of us. Yeah, it is a really a specific situation, and let's hope that we can, in our own surrounding, really make a difference, help ourselves, but also help then other people, and to really to come out of this crisis hopefully healthy, but then also hopefully with many new ideas. So really, thank you very much from joining from all over the place. The friends from Australia, now you really have to go and to sleep. The others still have a little bit time. So really, thank you very much. And then maybe we can switch on the cutting the phone, the links on. So if you want to say goodbye and so on, you can. Now you can all say bye to anyone.
Bye.